Amid a white light, two images come out. A married couple named Kate and John Coleman. Kate is pregnant, and the couple is admitted for delivery. They are ready for their third child, planning to name her Jessica. As she starts delivery, Kate bleeds profusely, waking up in the delivery room. Kate learns that their child is a stillbirth, which significantly depresses her. We realize that Kate is dreaming, waking up alone in her bed. She looks at her scars, taking medication for her depression. Kate continues to go to therapy to help with her grief. Kate discusses her urges for alcohol and how hard she's fighting the need to imbibe. She visits a local school as she goes home, picking up her 5-year-old deaf daughter, Max. Both girls travel home, only for Kate to be distracted by a family crossing. She floors the vehicle, only to realize the lights are still red, almost hitting a passing truck. Bothered, Kate tries to distract herself with music, trying to create her own music. She hears a loud thud from the second floor, only to realize Max is trying to play basketball. Kate scolds Max, only for her husband, John, and son, 12-year-old Daniel, to return home. John and the kids have fun together, enjoying a wonderful afternoon. Later, Kate puts Max to bed, reading her favorite story about Jessica in sign language. As Kate puts Max to bed, the little child asks for another sister. Kate considers adoption from St. Mariana's Home for Girls, a local orphanage. Later that night, Kate and John discuss their upcoming adoption, including their fears and anxieties. The couple proceeds with the adoption, going to the orphanage to check on potential candidates. Kate sees a visage of someone looking out from the upstairs windows, but she dismisses the thought. As they meet with the administrators, both look around with optimism for the right child. Kate anxiously looks around while John looks for a place to smoke. As John moves around the rooms, he finds a girl singing while painting. He visits around, finding a young Russian child with raven hair named Esther. John takes an interest in Esther's painting while Kate discusses the process with the administrators. Esther tells her painting story, fascinating John, while Kate finds them together. Kate meets Esther and falls in love with her quick wit and maturity. John and Kate decide to take a chance on Esther, discovering that she came from Russia and the family that brought her to the US died from a house fire. 3 weeks later, the couple takes in Esther, picking her up from the orphanage and bringing her home. As they arrive, Esther goes on to meet Max and Daniel. Esther also meets Barbara, John's mother, and the kids' grandmother. While Max is immediately receptive to Esther, Daniel is primarily cold and unenthused. Regardless, Esther enjoys her new home, even getting her new room. Later on, the boys play around while the adults and Max surround Esther, showering her with attention. Daniel feels the lack of attention from his parents, annoyed with his new sister. The boys then go to the treehouse for some alone time. The boys open their secret stash of porn magazines and show off each other while the girls play outside. Barbara and Kate discuss the future, with the latter planning to teach music from home. Barbara tries to encourage her to return to her original job and move on. Later that night, a snowstorm starts brewing. Kate finishes her diary, trying to romance John. As they begin to make out, Esther and Max interrupt them. They all sleep together, capping off the night. The next day, John goes to work while Kate is ready to bring the kids to school. Esther goes down and wears a weirdly old-timey skirt. Kate tries to discourage Esther, but the latter reasons her way out of it. They later reach the school, with Daniel and Esther in the same class. The teacher introduces Esther to the class, but everyone makes fun of her outfit. Later on, the girls start playing near the waters, giving Kate a lot of anxiety. Daniel plays with his paintball gun, shooting toy soldiers for target practice near the forest. He goes on to pelt a pigeon, incapacitating it in the process. Esther and Max see the situation, with the former goading Daniel to mercy kill the bird. Esther kills the pigeon with a rock instead, showing off Daniel. Later that night, Esther locks herself in the bathroom. While this behavior sounds weird to Kate, she lets it off the hook. Inside Esther's room, Kate starts to pick off dirty clothes and inspect the general area. She finds a book in the drawer containing a picture. Kate does not open it, but Esther is too concerned, looking at her from afar. Later at school, Daniel and his friends bully Esther while the girls try to annoy her. As the girls break the book into pieces, they try to remove her favorite choker, leading to a guttural scream. Later at home, Kate tries to connect with Esther during a music session, even showing her a family scrapbook she wants to make. Esther tries to ask about Jessica, with Kate showing off their memorial to their unborn child. Esther fakes the connection, even shedding a single tear in sympathy. That night, John and Kate talk about their day and start to make out in the kitchen, almost leading to sex until Esther sees them naked. Later, Kate goes to Esther's room to explain what happened, only for Esther to nonchalantly brush this off with her somehow advanced knowledge of sex. This shocks Kate, telling the situation to an otherwise uninterested John. The next day at the park, John plays with the children. A female neighbor comes up to him, flirting while the kids play. Meanwhile, Esther eyes out her bully from school, creeping her out. The girl tries to move around, anxious about Esther's gaze. As she plays in the jungle gym, the bully tries to use the slide. Esther pushes the kid off, breaking off her leg. Later that night, Esther gets in trouble for her actions, denying every bit of it. Max covers for her, but Daniel shows open hostility, annoyed at how weird she is. John punishes Daniel for his rude behavior, sealing the treehouse off until he apologizes. At the supermarket, Sister Abigail, the head of the orphanage, calls Kate to check up on Esther. Max lip reads Kate for Esther in the distance, misunderstanding the entire conversation. Later on, Kate discovers Esther knows how to play the piano, with the latter hitting her with painful truth bombs. Kate complains to John, but he dismisses her, even arguing about the neighbor who flirted with him. The arguments unraveled John's infidelity from 10 years before, which he admitted 2 years ago. John would have none of it, blowing off Kate. Sister Abigail visits the household, warning Kate and John about the tragic events and accidents that seem to happen around Esther. She even reveals that the house fire that killed Esther's former family was arson. Kate confirms her biases, while John is protective of Esther's status at home. Meanwhile, Esther hatches a plan, roping Max in it. The couple eventually decides to bring Esther to the therapist for further evaluation. During this time, Esther raids John's garage office for weapons, including a hammer and John's revolver, even using it to threaten Max with Russian roulette. The girls rush to the road, pushing Max to cause a crash for Sister Abigail. As the nun gets out to check on Max, Esther blindsides her with a hammer, smashing her face, and Esther eventually hits her with killing blows, forcing Max to help her move the body and hide the evidence in Daniel's treehouse. Daniel sees them at the treehouse, and she threatens to kill him if he tells Kate and John. John and Kate bring her to the therapist, with Esther successfully manipulating her into a false sense of normalcy. She even shifts the blame to Kate, with the therapist unloading many of Kate's insecurities about herself. Meanwhile, Esther throws a tantrum in the toilet cubicle, angry about her many wrong moves recently. They go home, with John and Kate arguing about the entire situation. The orphanage eventually calls Kate, informing her that Sister Abigail is yet to return. Investigations unravel her corpse along the nearby road, with Kate suspecting Esther. Meanwhile, Esther starts playing with her black light, showing how she used invisible ink to depict her painting of a home burning, with people inside dying. Kate goes on the internet, confirming her biases with a Google search without tangible proof. She presents this to John, only for him to blow her off, believing she is paranoid. Kate goes on her investigation, running a crusade to find every inch of evidence available. She discovers that there are no records of her from Russia, fueling her suspicions further. The next day, John planned to bring Esther to the dentist, but she refused. Kate brings Max and Daniel to school, interrogating them about their experiences with their newly adopted sibling. John later tells Esther to do something nice for Kate. Esther, after that, proceeds to rip out the flowers from Jessica's grave, giving them to Kate as a bouquet. This puts Kate over the edge, roughly grabbing Esther's arm in distress and frustration, asserting that she did this on purpose. In the garden, Kate continues her breakdown. In another room, Esther breaks her arm using a vise, manipulating John into thinking Kate broke it. The entire event causes further strife in Kate and John's marriage, leading to Kate driving out of the home. Later, Kate starts to feel upset, eventually trying to return to her drinking habits but stops doing so, exerting better self-control. The next day, Esther releases the brakes in Kate's car, causing it to roll into oncoming traffic with Max inside. It eventually hits a snow mound as the vehicle rolls back, stopping it without incident. Later on, Kate and John go for couples counseling at home with the therapist. Kate wants Esther out of the house, but John and the therapist believe she's being too paranoid. Esther also points out the wine she found in the kitchen, causing John and Kate's therapist to think that Kate is over the limit again, though she's not. They suggest she return to rehab, and John threatens to leave her and take Daniel, Esther, and Max if she refuses. Daniel starts to investigate after Max's accident, learning from his sister about the accidents that Esther started. Kate wakes up later that night, visiting Max's room, only to find Esther sitting around. Esther reveals Kate's past, including how she passed out drunk near the pond, neglecting Max, who almost drowned in the freezing pond. Esther goes into a verbal joust with Kate, showing open hostility as she knows everyone is on her side. Kate goes out to investigate while Daniel plans to do his own checks. Kate eventually opens Esther's Bible, which contains pictures of different men. She also finds out the Bible came from Sarn Institute. Kate searches for Sarn Institute calling around. In her investigations, Kate discovers that Esther came from an Estonian mental hospital, and the orphanage she claims she was from has no record of her. Meanwhile, Daniel learns about Sister Abigail's death from Max and searches the treehouse. Esther sets it on fire and attempts to kill him, with Daniel falling flat on the ground. Esther tries to kill Daniel with a rock, but Max thwarts her attempt. Daniel is seriously injured, and while in the hospital, Kate tries to put an ultimatum on John, agreeing to leave only if Esther leaves. As Esther excuses herself, she goes into the ICU, trying to smother Daniel to death with a pillow, but doctors arrive in time to revive him. Kate, whose suspicions are confirmed and angry at Esther's attempt to kill Daniel, slaps her and screams at her to stay away from Daniel and Max, but she is restrained and sedated. The incident also makes Kate miss a call from an international number. John goes home with Esther and Max, with Kate heavily sedated at the hospital. Later that night, John goes on drinking downstairs to relieve his stress, downing an entire bottle. With John passed out drunk, Esther dresses provocatively, offering snacks, attempting to seduce John, who threatens to send Esther back to the orphanage after realizing Kate had been right about Esther's behavior. Dr. Varava of the Sarn Institute contacts Kate at the hospital, who tells her that Esther is a 33-year-old woman named Lena Klammer, born in Estonia. She has hypopituitarism, a rare hormonal disorder that stunted her physical growth and caused proportional dwarfism, and she has spent most of her life posing as a little girl. Lena is violent, murdering at least 7 people, including the last family that adopted her, after failing to seduce her adoptive father. The ribbons on her wrists and neck hide her scars from trying to break out of straitjackets. During this time, Lena starts to unload her disguise, removing her smoky eye makeup and the smudged mascara. She removes her lipstick and even her dentures, showing rough, damaged teeth from years of maddened self-neglect. Meanwhile, John tries to talk to Esther, hearing the ruckus. He goes to her room, but he does not find her there. As he goes out, he accidentally sees smudges near the black light. John unravels the black light, only to find the grotesque imagery Lena drew. As John picks up the phone, the power goes out, seeing a heavily damaged circuit board. As John checks around, he searches for Lena, only for her to stab John to death. Max sees the murder, hiding in her closet while Kate rams her vehicle at home. Lena gains access to John's gun, while Kate immediately searches for Max, but to no avail. Lena attempts to shoot Kate as they move around, wounding her arm. Kate then goes room per room, tending to her wound. Lena corners Kate in the bathroom, searching for her adoptive mother. Lena hears movement in the garden, with Max hiding in the bushes. Kate on the roof instructs Max to hide. As Lena opens fire on Max, Kate breaks through the roof above. She lands on top of her, knocking Lena out. Kate gets up, battered and bruised, fleeing as police arrive. As they walk around the freezing forest, Lena attacks Kate near the frozen pond, hurling them onto the ice. Lena slowly gains the upper hand, but Max tries to shoot Lena, shattering the ice. This sends Lena and Kate underwater, struggling to fight in the frigid waters. Kate starts to climb out, but Lena clings to her legs. Lena tries to manipulate Kate once more, pleading for her life while holding her knife to her back. Kate fights back, angrily kicking Lena in the face, breaking her neck and killing her. Lena's body sinks into the pond as Kate and Max are met by police, ending the harrowing turn of events.